Hey guys, David here. This is day 12 of crypto, DeFi, and PegNet videos that I'm doing. And today I've decided to talk about one of the articles I wrote a while back. I've put various titles on it over the years. Um, Laws of project development, how to build a unicorn, 33 rules for building a unicorn, things like these. But I think these notes are extremely helpful. I've been through a number of startups over the years. I think I did 10 startups before I hit 30. So, with every project, I've tried to digest all of the things that I learned and really put them down into sort of fundamental things that I could take to the next project that I could really learn from. So I'm going to open up the article and I'll post a link for 33 Laws I Learned About Entrepreneurship, is the title officially. Maybe I'll update the title. Um, but I just want to talk through these because I think there's going to be an explosion of new projects that come out of this 100 days where we're all sitting at home. People have the time to engage in their creative energies, and there are so many problems that need solving right now. So I'm going to just go through the article and kind of riff on different thoughts and why I put the different points down. So let's start with number one. Start with and always continue focusing on the fundamentals. So I think this is a concept similar to what Elon Musk talks about, which is go back to fundamental principles, build from the ground up. Don't make a lot of assumptions. I find entrepreneurs all the time, and I certainly did early on, made assumptions about their customers, their market, their industry. And so the way I usually start a project is with a lot of research. So I look at an industry and everything that goes into who are the people and why are they there, what are they consuming. Just to give you a concrete example, when I was first starting off my career, I got into renewable energy. I built a number of internet companies, but then I got into renewables in 2005, 2006. And one of the things I realized is after doing a lot of research that renewables were at this tipping point where it was going to be cheaper to produce renewable energy than it was to produce fossil fuel energy. And that's something that hadn't been true before. There had been, the oil shocks of the 70s and some politics with OPEC, but it was this time a fundamental shift. The price of oil was going up, and all of a sudden, for the first time, the price of biodiesel, for example, could outcompete the price of petroleum diesel. And so I dived into those fundamentals, learned about that process, ended up building a biodiesel facility, and raising about $5.9 million back when I was 19, 20 years old, back in 2005, 2006. And yeah, no, it was an incredible experience, and I learned a lot. But I got there by basically breaking down every part of that business, from every feedstock that went into the production to who were the manufacturers to who bought the end product. And what that gave me a good mental map for going forward was how to effectively sort of do that with any business, do that with any industry. Go down to the root fundamentals of how everything operates and then build back up from there. Number two, partner with solid, experienced, passionate, and professional co-founders. So it's a lot easier said than done. I have a friend that says, you wouldn't propose to a partner for marriage the first time you met them, and you probably shouldn't propose to co-found a company with somebody the first time you meet them either. It really is that kind of relationship. You're going to work extremely closely together for potentially years. You really want to get to know the person. Often the best teams are folks that have known each other for years, know each other's strengths and weaknesses, can get along, and can avoid sort of the founder drama that often plagues early stage startups. Number three, have an ambitious vision. This has always been a big driver for me. Is you know, unless you're doing something in an industry where everything's been figured out, something like blockchain and crypto, there's so much green field available that you should be able to come up with a really compelling vision. that attracts people. And often that's how you get started, is really by putting forth a vision and saying, here's what I think we need to build, and finding people who are already passionate about that. Number 4, don't go for all that is holy, don't go stealth mode. I've heard a lot of entrepreneurs over the years tell me they were in stealth mode. Very rarely if they ever emerged from stealth mode. I like to say that you should fear obscurity more than plagiarism. There are very few examples I've seen in my entire career of somebody like taking an idea and running with it. People are busy with their own lives, their own ideas. The likelihood of them, stealing your idea is extremely low, right? What's more likely is you didn't tell enough people about your idea. You didn't find the co-founders you needed. You didn't find the investors you needed. You didn't attract sort of the engineers and the infrastructure that you needed to even launch, right? So don't fear plagiarism, fear obscurity. Tell everybody about your idea, especially in blockchain where everything's open source anyway. People are going to challenge the idea. It's going to refine the idea. It's going to make it better, because ideas without execution are worthless, right? If 100 other guys have had that idea before, it's the first person that goes and actually builds it and delivers it to customers who are willing to pay for it. That's where the magic happens. Number 5, early media coverage, positive press are the lifeblood of your startup. It took me a while to learn this. You think that you'll kind of want to get it all finished before you reveal it, but in reality, the world likes to be involved in the process. It likes to iterate. Look at Andy Weiner and him writing the book The Martian, right? He released it to engineers chapter by chapter. They gave him feedback. He did an incredible job of incorporating that into, say, science-based fiction, hard fiction, about what it would really be like to survive on Mars. And so that process itself built up a community of people that were excited about his book and then eventually about his movie. So, I would say take a page from Andy and, tell people early and tell people often what you're trying to build. Even though it's going to be imperfect, that's okay. So, number 6, create as many options for the company as possible, especially for the critical path. So this is a concept that a lot of entrepreneurs haven't thought about before, but if you build a Gantt chart of your startup, you've got different things you have to accomplish, but there's always a bottleneck. And even when you solve that bottleneck, something else is the bottleneck, right? So if you've got a critical path to success of your project, figure out multiple ways of solving that. Because if you wait for the one thing you think is going to solve it and that falls through, you're set back. If you've got things going in parallel and you have multiple options, all of a sudden you've got a lot of possibility. Number 7, make real friendships. Don't be a jerk or ever burn bridges. So I've learned this a lot over the years is, not everybody's going to be your investor. Not everybody's going to be your partner. And I've had investors that passed on one deal only to, see it succeed and make progress. And then 2 years later, invest in something that I was building next, right? And if I had been all personally offended that they hadn't invested in my startup, I never would have received that critical investment in the next project. So this is a long process. It's a career. If you're an entrepreneur and you're building company after company, your reputation is everything. So guard that reputation, build friendships. Even when you feel slighted, don't burn bridges. Don't be a jerk, right? This is just common sense. Number 8, build a team with overlapping skills. So you got to have people that do different things. I've seen teams that are all engineers and it doesn't go well. And I've seen teams that are all business people and that doesn't go well either. You really have to have complementary skills among founders, and ideally both technical and business side. Now, I would say with the caveat that it's easier to teach engineers some business savvy than it is to get a bunch of MBAs to code. So, there's a reason that Y Combinator and others tend to prefer engineering groups, because in 6 or 12 months, they can teach them a lot of business acumen, whereas the reverse is very difficult to go back and build years of coding and other technical experiences. It's much harder. So if you're going to err on one side, err on more technical people on the founding team and the early employees. You don't necessarily need a ton of business acumen in the early stage. What you need to do is test the idea and find if there's product market fit, and don't just go off and build for a long time before you show it to people and verify whether anybody wants the features that you're creating. Number 9, all co-founders and employees should vest their equity. So this is important. Life can go in some crazy directions, and it doesn't even have to be, a bad actor. I had a close co-founder in one of my companies, and he got sick and had a medical issue, had to step back from the company after having been there about 6-12 months. Great guy, but life intervened, right? But he had effectively gotten all his stock grants, and so he walked away with a big part of the company. It took a long time to figure out, okay, how do we restructure things? How do we incentivize the people that are still here? And so ever since that experience, I've always put in place vesting packages for any team that I'm working with, encouraged entrepreneurs that I invest in to have vesting, because you never know what life throws your way. So vesting packages are really useful. Spend time to pick the right partners. That means always check references, have a 90-day trial period for employees, get to know the person over months, not days. And so this goes back to the hire slow and fire quickly, right? This is the old, it's much better to, slowly take on new people and quickly let go of people that aren't a fit. It's just the fairest thing to them. And honestly, it's best for everybody. Number 11, I learned that everything is negotiable. Whether it's a term sheet with an investor, there are no standard vendor contracts. Everybody that wants to get business done may be willing to be flexible. So when you get, contracts or proposals, try to find a way that works, and you might be surprised how many people are up for making a deal and negotiating things. And so this is sort of, maintain your flexibility if you want to be successful. I learned number 12 that no deal is a done deal until the papers are signed and the money has changed hands. So document everything. Value has not been recorded. Value has not been created until it is recorded. So it's easy to move fast and forget about the paperwork, but unless you record things, you can just forget what happened or the details, and then you have missed expectations about vesting or a deal or a partnership. So take the time to write stuff down. Doesn't have to be a ton of legalese, but just record stuff and it'll serve you later on. Let's see. Every virtual and physical community has entrenched interests. Your startup should know who they are and have a plan to address them. So this is every industry, right? There's a lot of tribalism out there, especially in crypto, and you got to be able to navigate that and understand what drives people to be involved, because that's how you're going to really be able to speak to them. I often say that it's hard to dissuade somebody of their existing opinion, but if you can understand how what you're doing aligns with their values, then it's a lot easier to talk with them. When raising investment for your startup, remember that money follows money. To court accredited investors, this is a US thing. It just, a lot of times there's that requirement. Create deadlines. Don't count on traditional banks or late stage investors. You really have to find investors that are appropriate for the stage of capital that you're looking for. It's just a good recommendation. Number 15, while the vision should be world-changing, expectations are really important, so be realistic about monthly, weekly, annual deliverables. So you've got this long-term vision. I think of Jobs, who had the vision for the Mac or the iPhone, and it took a decade more to really finally deliver on that vision. But he had to build, in the meantime, iterations that got closer and closer to that vision. When trying to go up to the learning curve, smart people and experts are always the best source of information. So talk to as many people as you can. But another way of saying this is, if you want to do a hack, go talk to somebody who's already done what you are about to do. They can tell you so much about how to achieve it, much more than you'll be able to read on the subject. Number 17, time is more valuable than money for your startup. If you can buy more runway for a little extra money, then make that trade every time. So this goes back to building an understanding of how long is it going to take to achieve your objectives. And I find developers that say, oh, well, I would have done that, but it costs $10 to sign up for that. Forgetting that salaries and the rest of the cost of the business, even if signing up for that little service would have saved a day or a week of time, it's a cheap cost for achieving that, right? Your startup only survives as long as your runway to pay the team to keep working on it. Meaning lean salaries for co-founders and early revenue is the key. Self-evident. Follow the user traction. This is another important one. You gotta try a lot of different things when you're building a startup, and the key is really to see what's working and quickly pivot to whatever's working, because you might have a vision for what you want to achieve, but you have to be extremely flexible on how you achieve it. Number 20, follow up every meeting immediately after. So people have short memories, they're busy, they're doing 10 other things. If you want to be impactful, as soon as you've had that meeting, send them a text, add their contact to your phone, just immediately keep the conversation going. That's really the key. If you think it was an incredible meeting and you follow up with them a month later, they may have forgotten all the context. So take introductions and make introductions. You never know how you're going to meet people. I was building a company, and our most entry-level employee, great guy, was ultimately the one who introduced us to his friend's dad, who was an engineer, who introduced us to an investor, who introduced us to a bigger investor, who introduced us to a former president of a huge corporation that ended up helping us get one of our major strategic partnerships. So don't discount anybody's ability to make connections and make introductions, and welcome them from wherever they happen to come from. Never presume. Ask customers, team members, and investors to take next steps and pull the trigger. So, there's a lot of tendency in the investment community to sort of not want to tell entrepreneurs no. If you don't get a decision, then you can't really accomplish anything. The worst thing is a slow no. It's much better to say, how can we move this forward? Is it a fit? What can we do on next steps? And if it's not, then go ahead and move on to the next. But it goes back to that long-term relationship building. Publish your accomplishments widely as possible. It goes back to creating buzz and people actually hearing about what you're doing. Nobody ever used a product they hadn't heard about. So embrace that and just know it's part of the deal, part of what you got to do. 24, speak at industry conferences. So I didn't even really get good at this, I don't know, until I was 6-7 years into my career. And I started speaking at industry conferences, and that's when the breakthroughs really started happening. So now anytime, I'm trying to go up a learning curve is, I seek opportunities to speak on the subject. It forces me to learn a lot about it to be able to really articulate it to others. So conferences are really powerful. I've rarely regretted going to a conference. I found them extremely valuable. It's a natural filter for people actually willing to show up, fly there, spend the money, and show up, right? There's a lot of people on the internet. There's a lot less people at a conference, right? Deals happen in person, so get ready to put your startup on a plane. I definitely learned this over the years. It's very hard to close things remotely. At a minimum, you need to be on the phone or a video conference, but really it helps to look somebody in the eye. And that's a little difficult in the current situation, but as the world gets back to normal eventually, you really got to meet people in person. That's where the friendships are built and the trust is built. I try to remind people, number 26, that Shark Tank isn't real. So I've never had an experience like Shark Tank. And I've interacted with angel groups and VCs and people all the way up and down the investment vertical. And you just don't walk into a room and give a pitch and get a decision. You educate people, you do a meeting, you do another meeting, you show them progress over months, you build a relationship. Almost never have I gotten investment in a company that I was building, or have I invested in somebody else's company unless I had already had a relationship for 6 to 12 months. That's the kind of time frame it takes, and that's why it takes a while to raise money, because it only moves at the speed of trust. Board of directors are an interesting thing, and this could probably be extended in the crypto context to foundations. You don't necessarily, especially at the very early stages, need a lot of top-heavy overhead on your board. You want to build this gradually with very trusted partners that are aligned with the mission and get what you're building. A lot of times those will come from investors or partners that you gain along the way. And so don't rush to put 7 or 9 people. It's very, very difficult to even organize that many schedules to all have a meeting together. So, I would definitely shy away from making it too top heavy. Focus on the core competencies of your startup, right? So you can't do everything. Delegate everything that's not in your organization's core competency to other vendors and partners and outside parties, and just focus on what you're really great at. Your whole startup founding team should know your industry, know your competitors, know technology trends that drive your business, and have a clean strategy. So this goes back to finding and working with people that really know the area that you're trying to tackle. It's difficult to get people who are outside of your industry to really understand all the nuances, or at least it takes a long time. And so if at all possible, find people that already have that expertise. Attack problems. Number 30, attack problems your startup has head on. Let go of uncommitted people, make hard choices. They cost less now than if you let them fester and cause problems later. Number 33, selling to enterprise is great, but remember that the process will take 6 to 12 months, at least, from the first meeting to signing a contract and delivering a project. So make sure you have the runway to get to the end with a big customer. Number 32, imagine sharp, modern website, product video, presentation, all the rest, right? So image is really key. I think about the branding of Ethereum and others, and it's always really sharp. It's always really on point. The products might not be fully mature, but they look good. And that inspires confidence. If you've got a 90s looking website, then people aren't going to feel like they can really trust it. And finally, number 33, adapt or die. You are literally running experiments to see what works with customers in the real world. And if you stop adapting and running new experiments, then you will fail. Therefore, pick adaptable team members. So not everybody has sort of this entrepreneurial drive to constantly iterate, and people can get discouraged when one experiment fails. But I like to quote, Thomas Edison, when people asked about, how did he keep going after he failed so many times trying to invent the light bulb? And he famously said that I wasn't failing, I was discovering ways that you couldn't make a light bulb. And something like 2,000 iterations later, he invented the modern light bulb. So, that's the perspective you really have to have as an entrepreneur, is say, okay, I'm going to discover all the things that don't work, and I'm going to follow the traction where it is working. So having built a lot of startups in my career, I just wanted to share a lot of those lessons. This is a much longer video than I've done before, but I thought it would kind of be interesting to go through one of my articles and give a little commentary. You may have noticed my crypto t-shirt of the day is Satoshi Roundtable number 4, which is a great event put on every year by Bruce Fenton and crew. So really fun discussion. I hope these lessons are helpful for people that are building this time, in entrepreneurs that have maybe built something and are thinking about building their next project. I encourage you to come up with your own lessons, write them down, really take what you can from every experience. I think repeat entrepreneurs are so rare, because if you had success in your startup, then maybe you've made enough money that that's your last company, or you retire afterwards. If your startup fails, then a lot of people go back to the corporate grind and take a safer job. And so there aren't a lot of people who've been through 5, 10, 15 startups over the years. And so hopefully a lot of this is useful. These, I think, are learnable skills. It is not magic to build startups. It is really just understanding these processes, this mindset, the tools that you need, and how to build these projects. So, I love working with entrepreneurs. I started my career long before I was an investor as an entrepreneur. So I hope all of this is really helpful to folks. But thanks for joining me today. I'll let you guys go, but be kind to one another, wash your hands, and crypto on. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Bye.